it's time for reassembly. So this now slightly cleaner part of the inlet manifold has to go in. As I discovered trying to get it out, this pipe here is attached to what I think is the fuel pump, so that has to go on first. That made it a little tricky to get it out, I discovered. Plus, this pipe is also connected to the block, so they have to be connected first, and then I can start bolting this back onto the block. You will have to hook that fuel line that attaches to the block under that hose first before you connect the front pipe to the fuel pump. Otherwise you won't get it back in. That was a bit tricky getting it lined up. What I said before sounds easy, but it was actually fairly fiddly. Getting that hard fuel pipe lined up so the thread of the bolt, which is actually a hollow bolt that allows fuel to flow through it, getting that bolt lined up with the thread on the block was a little bit more fiddly than I expected. But there are two studs that help you to line up this manifold. There's one at the front and one right at the very back, which is a little bit hard to get to, but at least it helps you line up. And so that's now in position. As you can see, I've got the front bolt and number 3 in, and I'll start bolting it up. Well, this is a little trick a friend of mine told me ages ago, which I haven't really needed until now. But to get up underneath the manifold there and get these bolts in, using a little bit of toilet paper or paper towel was quite handy for getting the bolts to stay in the socket while I slipped them in there. So that one was a real winner. And this is the cover for the manifold, which will go in next. And it'll go over the top of the manifold, and then I can start putting the injector pipes back in. I'll get on with that now. So I've connected the fuel pipe that comes from the pump down here, and then connected it to the outside of this bracket that holds it on the outside of the manifold cover, and then it comes up to this pipe here, which will connect into the top of the fuel rail. I've slipped the rail into place, the fuel rail, and I've connected up the middle one, just hand tight, which is just holding it in place for me. And the cable that needs to be plugged in is just sitting there waiting for something to plug it into a bit later. So now I just need to put the 2 bolts in underneath, which hold the rail in position. So I've connected up the fuel rail. It's bolted on to the manifold now, and I've connected up the front bolt, which is actually hollow and allows fuel through into the rail or out of the rail via that pipe. And I can now replace all the other new fuel pipes up to the injectors, which was required in my 180,000 service. So 2 birds with 1 stone. Our lovely shiny new injector fuel line pipes are in, One little trick there was to leave the riser from the fuel pump, or to the fuel pump, this one here, until last, because tightening up number 1 was really difficult in that tiny little space there. So if you leave number 3 loose until last, it means you can move it out of the way to do that. You can see the dipstick pipe is also a bit of a pain, but it moves out of the way without too much trouble. You can remove it, but I found finding the hole again, put it back into the block down to the sump was more difficult than I expected. I couldn't remember where it came from. And now I've put a new gasket at the end there of the EGR pipe. You can see I've got it connected at the hose at the front. There's a little bolt there that holds the dipstick in. I haven't put that in yet. And another riser there for something or other. Fuel pipe maybe, I don't know. And I'll get that in position. And then the EGR valve itself sits on top there. I think that's the EGR valve on top there. And that'll go across to the other side to the EGR cooler. So that'll be the next step after I get. So I've got the top section of the EGR pipe back in. I've connected up the main hose at the front. Started connecting up all these wires that go everywhere. I've got lovely little clips that can be released and then re-clipped, but unfortunately I've broken some, so good old zip ties or cable ties have come in handy there. Hopefully I haven't forgotten something down the bottom or I'll be in trouble. I'll have to go back down there and do all that again. But what I'm going to do next is put the EGR pipe on that goes across the top and then connect that one up. And then I'll look to see if I've got any spare parts. If I've got any spare parts, then I'm going to be in trouble. Uh-oh, spare parts. Well, luckily I've got one of them in, so it looks like I might be able to get them in after the fact. But I should have put these in when I put the fuel pipes in. These are just little supports to stop them rattling around too much. Anyway, I'll see if I can get them in now without having to pull the whole thing apart again. That was lucky. It appears that those little clamps can actually go on afterwards. As you can see, they weren't that hard to get in, but it would have been a whole lot easier if I'd have put them in first. So anybody who's trying this for themselves, you can see I should have done that before. This looks like one of the last pieces. It's all nice and clean now. Doesn't look like it, but it's a lot better than it was. Down inside here you can actually see the working parts, which are nice and shiny now, but they were disgusting and black yesterday. So we'll put that back on. All the pipes and hoses and the fuel filter, everything's back in there now, with the exception of the battery. I'll pop the battery in and see what blows up. I can't see anything obvious that I haven't connected that's hanging loose, so I think this is almost finished. The battery is in and it's all pretty much done. I just need to put the plastic thing on top and turn the key. Alright, so it's running. There's some strange sort of squeaky noise there, but hopefully able to find out what that is. Hopefully it wasn't anything to do with what I've done. But the running rough issue that I had is probably gone. But I'll find out in a couple of days and then I will report back.